Well, I'm sorry, that was such a close-run thing. It's always a fright getting from Richmond across town. So here am I, just a tad late. The title is Embracing the Need for Transparency, talking a little bit about the work to date on data.gov.uk. Actually, it is just data.gov.uk. I transliterated the title from the proceedings too literally. Let me say it's a bit of context. In many ways, Tim Berners-Lee and I were fortunate to be in the right place at the right time. The cause of open data seems to be one that is increasingly gaining momentum. It's not just governments of all stripes, it's cities and organizations or individuals all thinking, almost outbidding each other to release data. Just to say, our emphasis with the work with the government was non-personal public data. And for most people, you wouldn't think this would set the heart racing. But the curious fact is that it really has been hugely exciting for many reasons. So whether it's the UK's own data or the City of London, there is a moment. This is Vivek Kundra on the right, who is the CIO of the United States. And we have a little bit of a friendly competition going on here. In fact, in Wired magazine, I hear he's just announced 250,000 data sets have been released. Depends how you slice and dice your geographic data sets as to how many you can get. But it has been interesting, and we're beginning now to even see the ability to cross-compare public sector data sets on everything from crime to environmental release to geographies and so on. We began this work, certainly my research team at the University of Southampton, we began working back in the mid-2000s with the Office of Public Sector Information to think about what the next generation of web technology might do for data integration. And back then we were doing experiments at the local and central government level and with other agencies to try and see what the art of the possible might be. And some of that notion was making its way into government publications. This was a Ministry of Justice publication that was reporting on the possibility that was opening up. And then Tim Berners-Lee and I were appointed by the previous Prime Minister back in June as government information advisors. And we were building on a lot of work that had gone before, the work that people like Steinberg had undertaken and others on the power of information, task force work, previous work with the Office of Public Sector Information. But the recognition was, from the top of the political leadership, was that opening up this data might enhance transparency, it might aid accountability, it could add economic and social value, it could also drive public sector improvement, and it potentially create new industries and new jobs. So this was an exciting agenda, full of promise and opportunity. Now, people say, well, what's the new attitude within the new administration, within the new government? And actually, if you read their manifesto, both their technology manifesto and their core manifesto, open data is everywhere. I mean, it's a really quite radical agenda. These are some of the quotes from various places. And what's distinctive about this is the commitment particularly to fiscal transparency, to what the government spends, where the costs go. Now again, in the US, this has been available for some time. One of the things that the Obama administration put in place was the notion of making the recovery stimulus money tracking the dollars, how they were spent. Well, a powerful new right to government data, possibly even a personal individual right to data, using open and standardized formats. We go through that list and we see an awful lot of commitment to open data. Every government contract for goods and services worth over £25,000, the so-called Treasury Coins database, which is would give a very complete profile of where the money goes. And at the local level, everything above £500 in spend. Now, this data will doubtless be poured over by all and sundry, but it's interesting to see how they're also talking about, the government's talking about extending these principles to local government, which I think is a key feature, really important feature of continuing the work. To date, what we've achieved is data.gov.uk itself, it now has over 3,200 substantial data sets. We have used open source, open standards to build it. So this was procured using what's called a beta model. So this was not a finished IT product. It was a product that was offered up for people to continue to improve. We're proud of that. We're proud of the fact that it cost relatively very little to build compared to many IT projects, and it, moreover, was built on open source standard software. This software, by the way, is software that has been under attack more thoroughly when it's used by, for example, Wikipedia runs one of the software packages we use, and the amount of, when you have an open system like this, it attracts a lot of attention, not always welcome. But it means that this software is very, very security hardened out. It's remarkably robust to people often think that somehow open source means compromised security, but absolutely not the case. We've worked hard on a new source, a new open license, what we think of as the Crown copyright for data, that allows the presumption that you can use the data without as long as you don't do bad things with it, but you can commercially exploit it. We've got excellent people within Whitehall who get the opportunity to publish data in many departments, who are proud of the data they collect and think it should be made available in a variety of compelling ways. The web succeeded the first time around because when people put their web pages up, they could never anticipate what somebody else might do with that information or how they might link to it. The same proposition holds with data on the web, that your dusty, dry data set that you could think nobody would have a possible interest in can actually be relevant to somebody you didn't anticipate. This model sees government releasing data and other people building the applications and services that can live off that. We've built a community now of external developers and users and a group of experts who know how to do this stuff. And there's clearly an appetite for taking this forward. We have public data principles that are actually published in the Smarter Government White Paper. These are important. They say that public data will be published in this machine-readable format, that they'll be available and easy to find through the single point of access, that will use open standards, that the government's own websites will be published in reusable forms to others to use. Now, this is actually quite radical. Very often, many government websites find it hard to describe the information they have in themselves in a way that other machines and other catalogs can take advantage of. So, reusable form for all data sites. Open licenses, be published quickly and in this new linked data form. There is a new set of standards coming through in the World Wide Web. It's called linked data. It's an attempt to move from a web of documents to a web of connected data. When Tim gave us the World Wide Web, Tim Berners-Lee gave us the World Wide Web in the 90s, this was a very thin layer of standards that sat on the existing internet. And this very thin layer of open standards allowed us to connect documents together wherever they were, whatever machine they were on. Imagine that model for data. Now, not all data. We don't advocate the principle that everything is put out there, but for the stuff that one is happy to release, it becomes very powerful. You can describe the objects of interest to government in this way, the schools and the roads. The idea here is that if I were to put in what is called a URI is just a web address for data, just like the stuff you type in when you go to Amazon, when you put in the web address in your browser, a URI that takes you to a piece of information. This is a new kind of national digital infrastructure. It's something that government will be able to develop for themselves. It doesn't mean that we have to use one grand vocabulary for every piece of government. One of the breakthroughs with this approach is that it allows departments and organizations to develop their own way of describing information and to have a few core link points. That's why it's called linked data, where information connects through. Crucially, this is very often geographic data. And one of the reasons that Tim and I work very hard to get significant free data release from the Ordnance Survey was that map data, place and space, is the thing that connects so much of our other information together.